September 25, 2022. A sultry afternoon in the peaceful countryside of Kumhi, near the city of Jabalpur, Madhya Pradesh State, India. On the screen was a blurry image from a security camera at a roadside grocery store. A young man walked slowly, his eyes lost in thought. It was Ashish Chaudhary, a 26-year-old bricklayer, a gentle, simple son of Kumhi village. Just a few hours later, his body was found on the side of the road with his head crushed by a hard object. The haunting scene seemed like something out of a horror movie. At first, people thought it was an accident. But no one expected that after all. The person who caused that death was the person who had been sleeping with him, his young wife, and her lover in a murder plan that lasted for months. Chaudhary was born in 1996 in Kumhi village, a peaceful countryside in Jabalpur city, Madhya Pradesh State, Central India, Ashish, India. Kumhi is nothing special. Narrow dirt roads, tin-roofed houses nestled among rice fields. Life here is slow, austere, but full of village love and neighborliness. Ashish is the eldest son in a poor family. His parents are both old and live on the meager income from their son's job as a construction worker. Unable to afford an education, he dropped out of school early to work and earn money to support his parents. Day after day, he carried bags of cement, mixed batches of concrete under the blazing sun with a simple dream to build a small, peaceful home. 3 years ago, Ashish married Manisha Chaudhary, a girl 7 years younger than him. The marriage was not based on deep love, but on matchmaking and support from both families. However, in the early days after marriage, they lived quite harmoniously. Manisha was a pretty girl with a bright face and deep eyes, while Ashish was a calm, gentle, and hard-working man. Their life was simple: a small house, an old motorbike, simple meals every night, and seeing her husband off to the bus station in the morning. Ashish was not good at speaking flowery words, not good at expressing his feelings, but every salary he brought home was the result of hard work from morning to night. He loved his wife with all sincerity and absolute trust, to the point that it was that trust that unintentionally turned him into the ideal prey for a cruel plot. In the first months after marriage, Ashish and Manisha's life went smoothly. They were not rich but not poor either. Every morning, Ashish woke up early, prepared his tools, ate a quick cold meal, and went to the construction site. The hard work made him tired, but he did not complain. For Ashish, as long as his wife was happy and his parents were well fed, everything was worth it. Manisha stayed home to do housework. She rarely went out, mostly staying at home, occasionally visiting the village market or visiting a few friends. In the early days, she even sent text messages to her husband, asking about him and encouraging him. But then, that concern gradually lessened, replaced by longer trips to the market, clumsy lies about visiting an acquaintance's house, going out to relieve the stuffiness. Ashish had no doubt. He was a traditional man, down-to-earth, unpretentious. He believed that women should be dutiful, while men should be concerned with making money. Little did he know that while he was sweating it out on the job site, cracks were quietly spreading at home. The villagers began to gossip. They whispered that Manisha had been seeing a man named Dharmendra, a young mason who had worked with Ashish on an old project. Dharmendra was unassuming, but he was lively, smooth-tongued, and dressed more smartly than one would expect of a mason. Many times, neighbors saw Dharmendra hanging around Ashish's house when he was at work. Some saw him go in and out of the house, sometimes for hours. Rumors spread quickly. Once, Ashish asked Manisha about it. She just laughed and said, "People are talking nonsense. I was just saying hello." Ashish kept quiet. He believed his wife, or at least he wanted to believe. But in reality, things were going downhill fast. Manisha was becoming more and more distant. She stopped cooking dinner for her husband every night, stopped asking about him, and stopped being so affectionate when Ashish came home. Meanwhile, her affair with Dharmendra was getting deeper and deeper. No one knew exactly when it started, but by the end of 2021, they were seeing each other like a real couple, dating, talking, and even talking about the future. In late September 2022, the weather in Jabalpur was still scorching with the late summer sun. Ashish still maintained a regular routine, waking up at 5 a.m., having a quick breakfast, then walking nearly 2 kilometers to the bus station to go to work on the outskirts of the city. He did not know that, during the days he was away from home, Manisha and Dharmendra had been secretly meeting regularly, no longer keeping their distance like before. On September 23rd, a nearly 45-minute call between Manisha and Dharmendra was later recorded in the SIM data. The content revolved around ending the relationship with Ashish, a cold euphemism for a murder plan. On September 24th, Manisha told her husband that she had been invited to a neighboring village to help prepare for the death anniversary of an acquaintance. Ashish did not suspect anything, only telling her to be careful and come back early. But in reality, that day, she, Dharmendra, and a man named Emil, Dharmendra's friend, discussed the details of the plan to lure Ashish to the parcel market, give him alcohol, and then attack him in a deserted area. On the morning of September 25th, Ashish left home as usual, carrying the lunchbox prepared by his wife and his tools. At around 2 p.m., he received a call from an unknown number. It was Emil, pretending to be an old friend and inviting him out for a drink and chat. Without any doubt, Ashish asked for leave early, left the construction site, and walked to Parcel Market. There, he met Dharmendra and Emil. The three of them sat under a large tree, drinking a few glasses of wine. Ashish laughed and talked freely, not knowing that in a few minutes his life would end. It was at that moment, when the sun began to set, when the victim's defenses were completely down, that the brutal plan was activated. Around 3:30 p.m. on September 25, 2022, in a wasteland on the outskirts of Parcel Village, under the shade of an old neem tree, 3 men sat drinking. Ashish Chaudhary was starting to get a little tipsy. He didn't notice that, ever since he sat down, Dharmendra and Emil had been exchanging strange signals in their eyes. No one but them knew that, right here, in what seemed like just a meeting of old friends, a murder plan was about to be carried out. Suddenly, Dharmendra stood up, pretending to urinate. He went behind Ashish, silently picking up a large stone weighing nearly 5 kilograms from the base of a tree. No warning, no scream. Just a hard blow from behind on the victim's head, a dry sound like the cracking of a living thing. Ashish collapsed instantly, unconscious on the ground. In just a few short minutes, the 26-year-old man's life ended at the hands of 2 men he once called colleagues and acquaintances. One for love, one for money. After making sure Ashish was dead, the 2 killers propped his body up against the motorbike, trying to make it look like an accident. The drunk man fell off his own horse and hit his head on a rock. Dharmendra wiped the blood with a towel, while Emil threw the murder weapon into the bushes. They left without haste, without panic. For them, it was all calculated. No witnesses, no cameras, no sound. But there is one thing they do not expect. The truth will always find a way out, no matter how well buried. At around 6 p.m. that same day, as the sunset fell over the fields of Parcel Village, a villager returning from the market discovered an unusual sight. A motorbike parked on its side by the roadside. Next to it was a man lying motionless, his head bowed to the ground. At first, he thought it was simple. Another drunk man fell down, not uncommon in the countryside. But when he got closer, he was shocked. There was blood. A lot of blood. The blood had begun to dry in the afternoon sun. The man's head was deformed, the scalp torn off, and blood was staining the ground. Terrified, he quickly called the local police. At around 6:20 p.m., a police team from Parcel Station arrived. The area was quickly cordoned off. Medical staff confirmed that the victim had died several hours ago. He was identified as Ashish Chaudhary, 26, a resident of Kumhi village. Next to the body was the victim's familiar motorbike, the keys still in the ignition. There were no signs of a struggle, and no property was stolen. The wallet and phone were still intact. Investigators immediately noticed something unusual. The head wound was severe, deep, concentrated, and inconsistent with the type of trauma from a fall. The bike itself had no scratches, no bent handlebars, no signs of impact. Everything was too neat, too clean for an accident. That same night, the body was taken to the Jabalpur hospital morgue for an autopsy. An official investigation began, and the name Manisha Chaudhary, the victim's wife, began to appear in the police records as a suspicious figure. On the night of September 25, 2022, a forensic team from Jabalpur city was urgently dispatched to the scene. The area around the body was sealed off within a radius of 50 meters. Under the light of flashlights and police headlights, every smallest detail was examined. The first thing that aroused the experts' suspicions was that the motorbike showed no signs of having been in accident. No scratches, no bent handlebars, and the rearview mirrors were intact. The road surface was dry, with no skid marks or signs of a fall. Next, the position of the body. Ashish was propped up against the motorbike, his head bowed down, with deep wounds and large blood clots on his forehead and nape. These were not normal injuries from a fall from a motorbike. They showed signs of repeated impact with a heavy object. Police found 2 large rocks nearby, one of which had dried blood on it, suspected to be the murder weapon. Footprints were also noted around the scene, especially strange shoe prints that did not match the victim's foot size. The next morning, the autopsy results confirmed. Time of death: around 3:45 p.m., nearly 3 hours before the body was discovered. Cause of death: severe traumatic brain injury caused by repeated blows. No other scratches on the body, making the fall from a motorbike hypothesis even more absurd. In particular, under the victim's fingernails, there was a strange hair and skin cells, which were collected for DNA testing. This is an important clue, which could reveal the identity of the murderer. At the same time, the investigation team returned to Kumhi village to inform Ashish's family of the sad news. Manisha, the young wife, appeared too calm, not crying, not shocked, not broken down like a normal wife. That attitude made the police question. After the autopsy revealed that Ashish was murdered and not an accident, the case was immediately turned into a case of intentional homicide. A task force from the Jabalpur police station was urgently formed. The first name that came under scrutiny: Manisha Chaudhary, the victim's wife. When summoned for an official statement, Manisha showed no sign of grief. She calmly replied, "I heard from the neighbors that he had an accident. I don't know where he went yesterday afternoon." That cold attitude was not like a wife who had lost her husband less than 24 hours ago. Police began retracing Ashish's last movements. His phone records revealed a crucial detail: a call from an unknown number at 2:10 p.m., just before he left the construction site and disappeared. The phone number was identified as belonging to a man named Emil, who had a previous conviction for theft. Following the SIM card and GPS tracking, the police discovered a connection between Emil and Dharmendra, who had worked with Ashish before. From there, all the clues gradually came together. Further examining Manisha's phone and social media accounts, the investigation team found a series of deleted messages between her and Dharmendra. Although most of the content was deleted, some recovered fragments revealed a shady relationship. "We just need to get rid of him, and I will be yours forever." On September 28th, police began tracking Dharmendra, who was on the run, changing his residence frequently. An arrest warrant was immediately prepared. On the same day, Emil and Manisha were also detained for investigation. Just 3 days after the discovery of the body, the investigation team had fully identified the 3 main suspects of the murder case: Manisha, the wife; Dharmendra, the lover; and Emil, the supporting accomplice. On September 28, 2022, 3 days after Ashish's body was discovered, Jabalpur police officially issued an emergency arrest warrant for the 3 main suspects based on the evidence collected. Dharmendra was arrested first at a guest house on the outskirts of Gorakhpur, about 70 kilometers from the crime scene. When the police raided him, he was sitting drinking tea, looking as if nothing had happened. But when confronted with the evidence from GPS data and traffic cameras, his expression quickly changed: panic, confusion. Emil, who directly assisted in the crime, was arrested at a small market near his relative's house in Mandla. He did not resist, but as soon as he was handcuffed, he shouted, "I was tricked. I am not the one who came up with this." The arrest that shocked the public the most was when the police came to Kumhi village to arrest Manisha Chaudhary, the victim's wife. When the police appeared, the people flocked to watch. The young girl, who had been praised for being gentle and obedient, now stood in front of her house gate in handcuffs, head bowed, not a single tear. The 3 suspects were held separately for questioning. The case was heavily covered in Indian newspapers, with sensational headlines: "Adultery and blood, young wife cold-hearted murderer, conspiracy in the bed." Public opinion is divided. Some are outraged by the cruelty, others question the extent of the psychological manipulation by Dharmendra's lover. But for the police, what they need now is a confession, to piece together the remaining bones of truth. All 3 suspects, Manisha, Dharmendra, and Emil, were taken separately for questioning that lasted several days. Dharmendra was the first to waver. He initially denied seeing Ashish on the day of the murder. But then the police produced GPS evidence from his phone, which showed he was in the Parcel Market area around the time of the crime. Then there was traffic camera footage of him leaving the area shortly after his death. The climax came when a DNA sample from the skin cells under the victim's fingernails was compared. The result matched Dharmendra. Unable to deny, he bowed his head and confessed, but blamed Manisha as the mastermind. Emil, the 3rd accomplice, also succumbed to the pressure. He quickly revealed the entire plan, from luring Ashish away from the construction site, giving him alcohol, choosing the crime scene, and even setting up a fake crime scene. He claimed that Manisha was the one who provided detailed information about her husband's schedule and was the one who directed everything. Manisha remained silent for the first 2 days. No tears, no reactions. But on the 3rd day, after nearly 16 hours of continuous interrogation, she bowed her head and spoke softly. "I just want to be free. I didn't think things would be this terrible." She said that life with Ashish was a loveless prison, that she felt suffocated and bored, and that Dharmendra was indulgent and a good listener. The secret relationship lasted for nearly a year, at first just an escape from monotony, then passion, and finally a psychological deviation, turning into the decision to kill. With statements from all 3 involved, along with clear evidence, DNA, text messages, GPS location, and a bloody weapon, the police officially initiated a case of organized murder under sections 302 and 120B of the Indian Penal Code. First, they reviewed and classified all the physical evidence. Murder weapon, 2 large rocks, one with the victim's blood on it, examined and confirmed as the cause of the fatal injuries. DNA sample, skin cells and hair obtained from Ashish's fingernails, matched Dharmendra, confirming that the victim had tried to fight back. Location data, GPS from the phones of all 3 defendants shows a matching presence at the location and time of the crime. Recovered messages. Some of the conversations between Manisha and Dharmendra were recovered, including content like, "We have to do something. I can't live like this forever." Next came the matching statements from the 3 suspects. All 3 confirmed that the plan to kill Ashish was agreed upon in advance, with clear division of roles. The forensic report confirmed Ashish died from multiple traumatic brain injuries, which could not have been self-inflicted. There were no signs of strong self-defense. The victim was attacked suddenly from behind. Dharmendra was seen frequenting Ashish's house while he was at work, who had heard Manisha complain about being held captive. In addition, the police also collected statements from neighbors and an indirect witness, a former prisoner. All data is bound into a file of more than 400 pages, numbered in detail, arranged in legal order. On October 15, 2022, the case file was transferred to the Jabalpur Special Criminal Court. The case was formally taken up for trial, concluding the investigation phase. On November 22, 2022, the first hearing of the case of Ashish Chaudhary, murdered by his wife and 2 accomplices, took place at the Jabalpur Special Criminal Court. The case quickly became the focus of the Indian media, a tragedy that converged all 3 elements: adultery, betrayal, and organized murder of the husband. The 3 accused, Manisha Chaudhary, Dharmendra, and Emil, were charged under Section 302, intentional murder, Section 120B, criminal conspiracy. The proposed sentence could be up to the death penalty or life in prison without parole, depending on the circumstances. During the trials that lasted nearly a year, the prosecution presented autopsy report, confirmed that this was not an accident, GPS location data, call extracts, recovered messages, testimonies of the 3 defendants, all consistent, with signatures of confirmation, witnesses, neighbors, forensic experts, the person who discovered the body. Manisha's defense attorney tried to argue that she was psychologically manipulated by Dharmendra, that she did not directly participate in killing her husband. However, the prosecution denied that. It was Manisha who planned, informed, and facilitated the crime. After more than 15 trials, on February 8, 2024, the court announced the verdict. Manisha Chaudhary, life imprisonment without parole. Dharmendra and Emil, life imprisonment without parole. All 3 were found guilty beyond reasonable doubt of murder in an organized manner with a clear motive. When hearing the verdict, Manisha did not cry, did not react, just silently bowed her head as if accepting the fate determined by her own sins. Ashish Chaudhary's death was not only the end of a life, but also the downfall of a poor, gentle family that only wanted a simple, peaceful life. In Kumhi village, Ashish's mother, a thin woman with prematurely gray hair, no longer sits at the door waiting for her son to return home every afternoon. His father, a man of few words, still quietly avoids eye contact whenever people mention the name Manisha, the woman who once called him father, who once stood before the ancestral altar and vowed to take care of his son for the rest of his life. Their pain is not only the loss of their children, but also the loss of trust when their own family members are the traitors. The case is closed, but the mental wounds it leaves on those left behind will never heal. The story of Ashish Chaudhary is a warning to us all. Love, without honesty and respect, can turn into cruel betrayal. Marriage, if it is only a cover to hide lies, is a breeding ground for evil. No one deserves to die because of an affair. No one has the right to take another person's life for selfish freedom. And no matter how well hidden a crime is, it will one day be brought to light. If you are watching this video, remember, just one wrong decision, one moment of losing control, can ruin your life and the lives of others.